As always, I have something to say about what we think the iPhone 15 is going to look like. A lot of people might say, "Oh, well, you're just being a hater," blah blah blah. Blah. No, I'm not. Okay, I have this MacBook right here that I'm using, and this is a great device. I have nothing bad to say about the M1 version of this MacBook Pro. I actually have an M1 and M2 MacBook Air. One will eventually get sold. Have nothing bad to say about the M1 MacBook Air. Have nothing bad to say about the configuration of the M2 MacBook Air that I have. So Apple as a company, whatever, we all know the types of things that they do. But before I go any further, let's see what John Prosser has to say about what we think the iPhone 15 is going to look like. All right.
That's what we thought we knew about iPhone 15 Pro then. Here's what we think we know about iPhone 15 Pro now. For starters, yeah, of course, obviously USB-C, that coming here too. Subtle difference from the base iPhone 15 though, the USB-C on iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max is much, much faster. Not from a charging perspective, nay, but for data transfer instead. We're talking a massive speed increase to Thunderbolt 3 speeds. For why? Because massive ProRes stuff. Also, this isn't really talked about too much with the USB-C additions to iPhone, but Apple will more than likely be placing some Apple-like limitations on accessories. In fact, this is the exact type of MIFI technology, MFI, made for iPhone technology, that all Lightning iPhones had, but it's notable here because none of Apple's other USB-C friendly products like iPad or Mac have this type of restriction. So it's getting just a little mention here on the show so I can help prevent you from using those sketchy, dangerous other chargers on your phone. Because if it's not MFI certified, it's gonna burn your house down. That's what Apple wants you to think. Anyway, moving on.
So 2 things to talk about when it comes to this announcement of this rumored announcement of the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro. First thing, yes, the iPhone is finally getting USB-C. It took 7 or 8 years longer than it should have, but finally it's here. But with this announcement comes the possibility that we're going to have USB 2 on the iPhone 15 base models and a Thunderbolt 3 port on the Pro models. I've said it in the past when we first started thinking about this, and I definitely thought and still think that a Thunderbolt 3 port on a Pro iPhone is a bit overkill. Is it nice? Sure. But is it something that most people are going to use? Absolutely not. But to give the Pro a Thunderbolt 3 port, which can transfer speeds up to 40 gigabits per second, and then give the regular iPhone USB 2 speed, seems like you're really giving it to the people who choose or don't want to spend that much money on an iPhone for a port that they probably aren't really going to use that much. But for those of us who do use the ports, it's unfortunate that Apple is making us choose. And as a person who has complained about data transfer speeds on phones for about a year and a half, well, about a year now, putting a Thunderbolt 3 port on the iPhone 15 Pro is not reason enough for me to spend the extra money. I don't need the extra cameras. I don't really care for promo. I don't need ProMotion. Whatever other things that come with the Pro series, I really don't know right now. But adding that port isn't reason enough for me to say, you know what? That did it. Of all the other differences between the iPhone 15 and the 15 Pro, what it was missing was a Thunderbolt 3 port. And even though, yes, I would prefer that just all the phones have USB 3, putting a Thunderbolt 3 port on the iPhone 15 is not reason enough for me to say, I'm going to spend the extra $200 or however many dollars is, $250 maybe, $300, I don't know. Whatever the difference in price is, it's not enough for me to say, okay, I'm finally now going to buy that iPhone 15 Pro. No thanks. What would have got me to buy an iPhone 15 Pro is if they still kept the smaller screen that was, I believe, on the iPhone 11 Pro, because the iPhone 11 Pro, I believe, was actually smaller than the regular iPhone 11. I think we had 6.1 inches for the iPhone 11, and I believe 5.9 inches for the iPhone 11 Pro. If that Pro device still existed in that size and that form factor, that probably would be a reason enough for me to say, you know what, that's the phone that I want. The next thing, which I honestly wasn't thinking about until I happened to pause it on the screen, is the fact that we're dealing with the A17. Real quick, I can imagine that since last year's phones had some differentiation between the Pro and the regular phones for the SoC, I can imagine that the regular iPhone 15 is going to get the A16 Bionic, which is last year's Pro chip, and the Pro devices will get the A17 Bionic. So just something else that's separating them. It's something that Apple chose to do to say, well, we got to find another way to differentiate these Pro phones from the regular phones. But the last thing that I want to mention is the fact that we're probably going to still have to deal with this MFI program. John said it, I've said it in the past, that, okay, it's clear that this is just a money grab for Apple. If they didn't have any USB-C products and this was going to be their first USB-C product, then I'd say, you know what? Fine. Don't agree with it, because there are plenty of reputable companies who make high quality cables that charge all of my and your other USB-C products that don't need Apple certification. But I would still at least understand that, okay, it's an Apple product. Apple's doing what Apple does, whatever. But because they already have USB-C devices, this MacBook, that MacBook, an iPad that don't require MFI certification, what's special about the iPhone? As I said before, if it was only the iPhone, I'd say, okay, that's Apple just doing Apple. But now if we're talking just within Apple, why does this Apple product not require MFI certified products? But this Apple product does require MFI certified products. It doesn't make any sense. So clearly just a money grab, because as I use this cable, which is an Apple cable, so USB-C to USB-C, it came with the MacBook Air. If Apple imposes any type of either charge speed or data transfer speed limitations on non-MFI certified cables, is that going to then affect their own products? Is this Apple cable not going to be able to allow the iPhone to perform at whatever its peak capabilities are simply because it's the wrong Apple cable? That's too much. Okay, that is just way too much. At some point in time, is this MFI program going to start affecting their blocks? But Apple does what Apple does, and that is something that Apple would do. So don't be surprised if, yes, you finally have nothing but USB-C devices, USB-C cables, but then you're like, wait a minute. I have all these non-Apple USB-C cables and one Apple USB-C cable, but they don't work with my iPhone. So now I got to buy another Apple USB-C cable.